And he actually said the painter, this is too much on the side, but the painter wasn't a bad guy. He was strict, but he taught him the trade. He didn't abuse him or anything like that. But that was the old days. That's how you got into society. I asked my father, "Did you ever think of college?" He looked at me. College, to a working immigrant son. You're lucky you got out of high school, junior, whatever they called it in those days. I think he made it to the 8th grade or something like this, and then he quit. So, you learn to trade, you work with your hands, you work with your back, and my grandfather was simply doing the traditional thing. So anyway, there was child labor in those days, you understand, and so on and so forth. So I could read you a passage here, how he becomes a radical. Sam becomes a socialist. The soapbox, you could say it transformed Sam's life. 70 years after the event, he recalled to me that moment when a man he never knew, speaking plainly and eloquently up on the box. You know what a soapbox was, do you? Plainly and eloquently up on the box, set him on the revolutionary path. He spoke of Spartacus and the slave revolts that shook ancient Rome to its foundations. Sam, returning from work, stood transfixed. Naive 14-year-old that he was, he could not see where the basic power relations between master and slave, between employer and worker, had changed at all. At the same time, he also saw that there existed a tradition of revolt. The soapboxer recommended a book that had served as the basis of a speech, The Ancient Lowly by Cyrenius Osborne Ward, with the lengthy subtitle, A History of the Ancient Working People from the Earliest Known Period to the Adoption of Christianity by Constantine. Sam devoured it. Surely he was not the first to be inspired by this 19th century classic. I was, by reason of harsh economic conditions, my bitter life as a low-paid exploited wage slave, and above all by my rebellious temperament, most receptive to the socialist message. So he became a socialist, and this is how he started. Actually, this book was the basis of Howard Fast, the novelist. He used that as the basis for the novel Spartacus, which became the movie Spartacus. So there's a tradition. A lot of people have read about this. I don't know how good the scholarship is by today's standards. He wrote it in the 19th century, but it's a classic. It's a breakthrough book. So anyway, I go on to discuss things. And what happened is that when he was with the socialists, there were two wings of the Socialist Party. There was the reformist wing, believed in political action, incremental changes in the system, you run for office, and this and that. And then there was a revolutionary wing, who also believed in electoral politics, but they were far more up on the left. That was the Eugene V. Debs wing. And what happened is that when World War I broke out, at first the Socialist Party came out against the war, but then when Wilson started to crack down, they all went over immediately, not the Debs wing, but the others, to the, became super patriots. And this sickened my father. And also, he saw the futility of the whole electoral process. He considered it a futility. There was a big election on the eve of World War I. There was a lot of opposition to World War I. And some socialists got elected to state legislature and this and that. And he describes in the book, I say, they hired railroad cars to take them to Albany, New York from New York City. the state, and they had blended away with the International, and they had the red flag, and they made speeches of the oncoming revolution, and then they got to Albany, and they didn't let them take their seats from a legal technicality, and as I say here, rather contemptuously, being who they were, a bunch of lawyers, they argued and compromised. And my father got sick of this. He couldn't stand it. They said, how could you have an American worker? They would talk about that worldwide solidarity of labor. They had all this Marxist stuff going on. And worldwide solidarity of labor, and you have an American worker and a German worker, and they both became super patriots, and now they were slaughtering each other. And the Socialist Party approved this. We have to stand patriotic and so on and so forth. You follow this? He had no use for them. The man, he does, but not Debs. Debs, he said he was really a fine man. And there's a famous quote by Debs that I put here. The old man, that's what they called Debs, was surely one of the great orators of American history. He was brave and he was honest. In 1906, less than a year after playing an instrumental role in the founding of the IWW, he was one of the founders, Debs told an audience of working men, "I am not a labor leader. I would not lead you into the promised land if I could, because if I led you in, someone else would lead you out. You must use your heads as well as your hands and get yourself out of your present condition." Isn't that a great quote? He left the IWW with the conviction that electoral politics, rather than strikes and industrial agitation, was the best path toward a just society. He ran for Socialist Party ticket in 1912 and received 900,000 votes. Don't forget the population in those days. Not bad for a revolutionist. He would not back down as the U.S. geared for war and the patriotic fervor began to mount. When I say I am opposed to war, I mean ruling class war. For the ruling class is the only class that makes war. It matters not to me whether the war is offensive or defensive or what lying excuse may be invented for it. I am opposed to it, and I would be shot for treason before I would enter such a war. Now I know that there are ladies present, and I know I'm fully aware of the new, what's the word, the new sensibility about men and women and equal, but please excuse me if I say he had balls. I hope you won't take offense. You understand what I'm saying? So then he says here, when I have this, and then Debs was eventually convicted of sedition under the Espionage Act. At the trial he said, "Your Honor, I have stated in this court that I am opposed to the form of our present government, that I am opposed to the social system in which we live, and I believed in change of, that I believed in change of both, but by perfectly orderly and peaceable means. I ask no mercy, I plead no immunity." And he received none. This is what I write. He was sentenced to 10 years in Atlanta Penitentiary. At a sentencing hearing on November 18th, a week after Armistice Day, Debs told the court, "Years ago, I recognized my kinship with all living things, and I made up my mind I was not one bit better than the meanest on earth. I said then, and I say now, that while there is a lower class, I am in it, and while there is a criminal element, I am of it, and while there is a soul in prison, I am not free." He said this at his sentence. In 1894, this is earlier, in response to his leadership in the Pullman Railroad car strike, the New York Times labeled Debs, quotes, a lawbreaker at large and an enemy of the human race. I'll let you decide. And he goes on, and how, and I go on with this. I'm just reading you various aspects of it. So my father, although he was an anarchist, he always had a high regard for Debs. He said he was a man of principle. He didn't know Debs, he shook his hand. He knew all kinds of other people. And I might go back a little bit because I'm rambling, but I'm trying to give you the flavor of it. The book is not only about him, it's about me and my family and growing up, and it's sort of like almost like a novel mixed in with a not that it's made up, it's all true as far as I know, but it's a mixture. But I was going to go back to what was I going to say? I forgot. Oh, I was going to go back to the fact that this is May 2nd. Well, I read you a little passage about my father. I guess I'm not fashionable. I didn't have tremendous conflicts with him. I loved him dearly, obviously. I think he was worth it. He was a cranky old coot. He had his faults. But he was a person, you know. Now, and everybody who knew him knew that. So here is a part about May Day. Oh, no, it's not. Well, it is May Day, yes. I was born April 8th, 1937. You guys thought I was younger, right? On November 11th of that year, my father, Sam Dolgoff, addressed an open-air meeting at Waldheim Cemetery in Chicago. Directly behind him stood the stone monument to Albert Parsons and 3 other anarchists falsely accused of planting a bomb that killed a number of policemen at a rally for the 8-hour day in Haymarket Square. They were hanged for the crime in 1887, despite their innocence, in what has become known as the Haymarket tragedy. My father shared the platform in this 50th anniversary of their martyrdom with Lucy Parsons, who had been a co-founder of the IWW. She was a black woman, still beautiful but frail, and nearly blind by then, and she called out to my father, her old friend, "Sammy, Sammy," and clung to his arm. So this is what I'm talking about. He had a revolutionary tradition. This is what I'm telling you. He spoke at the 50th anniversary of the Haymarket. So I think May 2nd would be a good idea to mention, you don't mind. And then he said, I write, I have a photograph of him facing that small crowd, the monument behind him, wearing an overcoat against the Chicago wind. Young, wild black hair swept back as best he could. It is the proudest moment of his life. The proof being he's wearing a suit and tie for the occasion. My father considered himself the direct spiritual descendant of the Haymarket anarchists, and all who knew him well had no doubt that he was. April 8th, 1937 followed the death of Buenaventura Durruti by a few months. The leader of the anarchist column, defending Spain against Francisco Franco's fascist army, he took a bullet through the brain in the Battle of Madrid. Durruti held no rank and answered only to his unadorned name. He refused to be saluted. He slept among his comrades in the field. My father was moved to tears by his death, and that is how I became the only person in the world named Anatole Dolgoff.